りじゃないって思えた時から叶えられそうな気がしたんだ変わらないいつもの笑顔のままで Hey guys, Mr. Klein here with our second of 3 lessons in our chapter. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about cultural diffusion and globalization. Two really big ideas that are really important in this day and age, and they might seem really complicated, but we're going to break them down in this lesson. And, you know, one of them is right here, tacos. But, I mean, who doesn't love tacos? Delicious meat and cheese, lovely toppings, and a crunchy shell. They're one of America's favorite foods. However, tacos, just like BMWs, Pokemon, Samsung, don't burn your hand there with that Samsung Galaxy, and soccer. Oh, look at that goal. Oh my goodness, Thierry Henry, what a legend. Anyway, these might have all, they're not from America. They've all come from different countries. So the question is, how did these foreign items and ideas become a part of American culture? Well, the answer is really, really simple. It's through a process of what we call cultural diffusion, or the spread of cultural ideas between people or people groups, such as between countries and empire. Cultural diffusion is not a new idea. We're only talking about it late in the school year, but we've kind of dealt with it here and there throughout our studies in world history. It's one that's occurred as long as there have been different cultures coming in contact with each other. And we're going to look at the way that this happens and the implications of it in our next sections. So now that we've defined cultural diffusion, you probably have a question in your mind other than, man, Mr. Klein, why did you make me so hungry for tacos? It's that, how does cultural diffusion occur? I mean, what are the ways? I don't understand it. Well, broadly speaking, cultural diffusion occurs in 3 ways, and we're going to look at them separately. And also, this is where we're going to do our graphic organizer. First one is what we call direct diffusion. It's the simplest one. It's a spread of cultural ideas between 2 cultures that are naturally close to each other. Makes sense. Next to each other, you're going to share ideas because you're like right next door neighbors. A good example of this is the fact that tacos, yes, tacos, okay? Tacos, despite coming from Mexico, is an American staple, okay? And this is where we're going to go in and we're going to fill out our graphic organizer on types of cultural diffusion. First off is direct diffusion. It's the spread of cultural ideas between 2 groups that are naturally close to each other. An example of this, like I said, are tacos. Tacos are popular over here in the United States, and they come from Mexico, our neighbor. Okay, we share a border. So Mexican immigrants coming back and forth, or people moving down to Mexico and coming back, they come with the idea of this sweet, delicious Mexican delicacy. So make sure you have this filled out before we go on to the next one. So now that we've talked about direct diffusion, we need to talk about indirect diffusion. It's the spread of cultural ideas between 2 cultures without living near each other. This happens really common, especially in this day and age with the internet and stuff like that. So you have 2 countries or 2 cultures who aren't directly connected to each other. They don't really share anything per se in terms of geography, but they swap cultural ideas with each other. Now, a good example is despite being invented in the United Kingdom, an island nation, the sport of rugby union is popular in countries like Argentina and New Zealand. I mean, look at this athleticism. Look at that kick. Oh, what a try. Anyway, so rugby union, even though it was invented in the United Kingdom, okay, is popular in countries that aren't directly bordering it. So let's fill out our second part of our graphic organizer. Indirect diffusion is the spread of cultural ideas without the 2 cultures being near each other. So sports popular here from around the world. Soccer. Ice hockey, well, that comes from Canada, okay? Baseball's popular in Japan and South Korea and in the Caribbean. They don't border the United States, okay? Basketball's really popular in China. Same thing. They're not directly linked to the United States, but because of indirect diffusion, it's popular. The final one is a little more forceful. Forced diffusion is the spread of cultural ideas when one culture, conquers another one and forces the conquered culture to accept their cultural idea. So there's no kind of, oh, I like this, I'll take this home with me. No, it's you get taken over and like, this is what needs to happen, or else. A good example of this was the widespread adoption of Christianity by Native Americans after the colonization of the New World, especially with the Spanish conquest. The conquistadors came in and just en masse converted them all to Christianity, whether they wanted to or not. So let's go ahead and let's finish filling out our graphic organizer for the lesson. Forced diffusion is the spread of cultural ideas when one culture conquers another culture. Okay, so the conversion of Native Americans to Christianity by colonists. That's a completely valid example of forced diffusion. So here's our three examples: direct, indirect, and forced. It's our graphic organizer, and we're going to talk about how trade actually affects cultural diffusion in the next section. Okay, so trade is probably the most important method of cultural diffusion. More ideas and concepts have come through trade historically than any other methods of cultural diffusion, okay, whether it's through direct or indirect cultural diffusion. It's very effective because it allows cultural ideas to spread in a very peaceful way, okay? No forced diffusion goes on here. It's very peaceful, as well as being based on the concept of people wanting new things. When a trader comes to a new market with foreign goods, people will purchase them if they seem to be more desirable, okay? You're not going to have a spread of new things, and people aren't going to accept it unless they actually want it. Because of that, the more desirable the good or idea is, the easier it will be for them to spread. Okay, so the more desirable it is, the more need that other people have it. Okay, you have a mighty need. Like I said, the more desirable it's going to be, the more people are going to want it, and the faster it's going to spread. Now, how does this actually occur? Well, this is how trade actually works with it. For one, you bring the goods, okay, that go from one culture to the other. That's one thing. Another thing is the traders themselves collect the cultural ideas and bring it with. Traders themselves spread culture when they meet other traders. They get to know people from other cultures. They learn cultural ideas from all over and spread whenever they get home. No matter how normal or how weird it can be. You stay weird, Japan. Okay, so yeah, so that's traders will go from one culture to the other, and they'll pick up these cool ideas and they'll bring them back and they'll share them with their friends, and it goes from there. Okay, and so what we're going to do in our next session is we're going to look at some historical examples we've looked at probably in history from now and on to later on in history. Okay, so cultural diffusion has occurred almost continuously throughout history due to trade. But there are some important instances that you might need to know and you might need to understand. First one we already talked about this year was Alexander the Great's conquest of the Middle East. Alexander the Great takes over most of the known world. He really loves Greek culture, says, hey guys, let's study Greek culture because it's kind of awesome and I kind of like it. And so Hellenism, of course, was the blending of the two. The next one was the Pax Romana, the height of the Roman Empire, through a result of peace enforced by the Roman Empire throughout the entire Mediterranean basin. You had this great interchange of ideas. One that we'll talk about in the next chapter, it's the Crusades in the Middle Ages. Christians fighting Muslims in the Holy Land. As a result of this fighting, you had people living there, coming in contact with people of different cultures, and they brought ideas back with them that changed both the Muslim and the Christian world, though more for the Christian Europe than for the Muslim Middle East. The Columbian Exchange, you sixth graders, you learned about this last year, in fifth grade. The Europeans come to the New World, they get all this cool stuff and not so cool stuff, and they give it to the Native Americans who give them some cool stuff and some not always too cool stuff either. In addition to that, for those of you in high school who might be watching this, European colonization of Africa, okay? Africa was pretty much swamped and colonized, for better or worse, by the Europeans in the late 1800s, with the influence, European influence still today. For example, most of West Africa, they speak French because the French controlled them. And finally, and this is one we all know and we understand, is the rise of the internet, okay, over the past 25 years. Exactly. So, and leading into that with the rise of the internet comes one factor that we will talk about and we'll wrap up this lesson with. with the rise of the internet and free trade and stuff like that nowadays, we have cultural diffusion happening. Easy travel between countries and the creation, like I said, the internet. Cultural diffusion occurs much faster and easier than ever before. Because of free trade around the world, people buy and sell things all the time, make lots and lots of money for stuff that isn't even their own local market. Now, this has created a modern world where cultures around the world have very many similarities and share common interests. And you have worldwide fan bases and interest groups, something that you never had before in human history. This is a result of what we call globalization. Globalization is the process by which different cultures become interconnected through trade and shared cultural ideas on a global scale. Not just Pax Romana and the Roman world or the Silk Road or anything like that. This is the entire planet. It has become interconnected through trade and shared cultural ideas. I mean, like my favorite, giant fighting robots from Japan, like Mobile Suit Gundam. Oh man, this is like the best stuff ever. Like I can watch this for hours. Look at that. Anyway, globalization. Stuff from, for instance, like giant fighting robots from Japan. How does a teacher in Louisiana, like, spend, like, most of his life enjoying that? The reason why is because globalization capitalizes on the ability for goods and ideas to spread fast. For instance, yours truly can watch an anime series the day it's broadcast in Japan, okay, through an internet service. Okay, it'll be shown in Japan, 15 hours later, I can watch it with English subtitles, and I can understand what's going on and follow it at the same time for which the market it was actually created for. So because things can spread fast, traditional barriers for cultural diffusion can be overcome quickly. For instance, shouldn't I not be able to watch, shows from Japan? They speak Japanese. I speak English. Well, whenever you have providers creating things for their market, that traditional barrier, they're like, hey, wait, people outside of Japan might want to watch this, so let's put English subtitles where they can understand it. It knocks down that barrier, knocks down the barriers of distance, cost, time. The internet is the great leveler of all this. This means that companies can become popular all over the world without adapting to local customs because people adapt to them. All these Chinese fans, okay, of Manchester United soccer. Manchester's a city in England, and they have like rabid fans all over the world. They all speak different languages, but they all have this common interest of a sports team in England. Not everybody agrees that globalization is a good thing. Okay, there's a lot of pushback in terms of globalization. People who criticize globalization will criticize it for many things, but we can summarize in that it destroys local culture. Okay, what makes these local cultures unique that we've studied about throughout history and replaces them with a generic worldwide culture that everyone has to agree with. I mean, look at this. This is in the Arab world and it's a McDonald's. So it destroys those local things that make places unique and replaces this with this generic culture. I mean, you can go to Australia and go to Target and KFC. In fact, Kentucky Fried Chicken is really popular in Japan too, not just here in the United States. And so this shared idea, not everybody thinks it's a wonderful thing because it destroys what makes local places unique. As a result, because of these issues, okay, globalization will end up being a really important topic for people around the world in the 21st century. And that's where we're going to stop this lesson here. And we'll go into a historical example of cultural diffusion next lesson. Okay, cultural diffusion is just the spread of cultural ideas between people or people groups. Direct diffusion is when two cultures are next to each other and they spread cultural ideas. Indirect diffusion is when it occurs when they're not next to each other. Force is when one conquers another one and takes it over like that. Trade's the biggest motivator for cultural diffusion. And then, some examples we talked about included Alexander the Great, the Pax Romana, the Crusades, the Columbian Exchange, and things like that. And we see it today through the internet and globalization. So there you go. That's the lesson. Hope you really enjoyed it. Hope you found it interesting. And if, as always, you have any questions, please let me know. And thanks for watching.